If I start with the highlights, overall we've seen a very positive performance, as we suggested we were going to see at the IMS. We've seen a 13% growth in revenues, and with that we've seen growth in escrow, 3% growth, and we've seen the operating profits in grow as well. In assurance we've seen a very positive performance, 18% revenue growth. Organic growth has been around about 11% without taking out the Sony contract. And assurance operating profits, we've seen a strengthening by 16% to 5.5 million. Obviously, within assurance, we've seen two very complementary acquisitions. In August, we acquired two businesses in New York, and we're very confident at their potential going forward, and more importantly, integrating them to be part of the group. They're important to us as they allow us to provide a full service to many of our international clients, and they're tremendously good businesses, and I'll speak about that a little bit later. In terms of Artemis, the .secure project, that's really progressing very well, as again we'd suggested at the IMS. We're cautiously optimistic that this is going to be coming through as early as Q1 in 2014, and in a little bit I'll talk you through some of the exciting areas of both investment and opportunity that we see. The group continues to be very positive about the future, as again, I believe you'll see through these numbers, and as a reflection on that, the interim dividend has grown by 15% to virtually a penny. Now obviously that's in decimalised money, because on the 18th of December we issued 5 new shares for every share that was held. Again, to reflect on our period on the main market, what we will see is good compound annual growth throughout. Again, that's been the story of NCC Group through the years, and we see no reason for that to change.
I'll start off with revenue. The group has performed well in the first half of the year, with revenue growing by 13%, of which organic revenue growth was 9%. The escrow business continues to have solid growth of 3%, although Escrow Europe did see a decline in revenue by 7%, which followed the loss of the general manager earlier in 2012. However, going forward, we do expect that growth to recover, and we expect a positive growth in the second half of the year. The assurance business continues to do very well, and its growth of 18%, of which 11% was organic, was very strong. As Rob alluded to, we also had a very large one-off operational response project this time last year. And when you actually take out the effects of that, the underlying organic growth of assurance is 18%. If I now move on to profitability, escrow's profitability remains very high at 56%. The reported assurance profitability also remains at 16%. But as I mentioned, we had a very large one-off project in the first half of last year, and it was also a very high margin project. So hence the underlying assurance margin is actually moving up. The adjusted operating profit margin has marginally reduced from 25% to 24%. And the key reason for that is our corporate costs have increased. We've increased our corporate costs to improve the cost of control, particularly in the US, where we've invested both in the infrastructure and in the supporting business processes. I also want to reflect on the 15% dividend growth, which we are planning. That's in place really, as Rob mentioned, because of the strong outlook for the full year, and that reflects our confidence in the full year forecast. This slide just shows you the movements between adjusted and reported profits. I just want to flag up that the exceptional costs that go through here are purely in relation to the two acquisitions, Matasano and Intrepidus, the deal costs, etc., associated with those have gone through there. I'm now going to talk about cash, capital and banking. I'll start off with CapEx spend. The CapEx spend is a combination of normal CapEx spend plus, as I alluded to earlier, the cost of control of the US. We have developed the infrastructure in the US to help it grow. And also in terms, I want to just point out that Rob will talk in more detail about .secure development costs, but the costs that we have capitalised today purely relate to patent costs and added asset creation. So they are legitimate capitalisable costs. If I move on to deferred consideration, iSect have achieved their full earn-out and we've made the final payment in December 2012. And the remaining payments are due in subsequent financial years. I'll go back up to the top on cash conversion. Our cash conversion remains very strong at 114%. We've always targeted a range between 120 and 130%. And this time around, we're slightly short of that. And the main reason for that is following the abandonment of SAP in the summer of last year, we did have a number of invoicing issues, which then subsequently affected cash collection in H1. We have rectified these, and we do expect the cash conversion to improve in the second half of the year. Our net debt is 28.1 million, and that follows the two acquisitions of Matisano and Intrepidus. And our banking facility is due to expire in July 2013, although we are in advanced discussions with a number of banks, and we expect to complete the renewal of the facility well in advance of July 2013. I'm now going to move on to one of the difficult areas, our IT systems. As you know, in the summer of 2012, we made the very difficult and financially expensive decision of abandoning our SAP project due to the disruption it was causing our business. We then embarked on a process to revert back to our legacy systems. The whole process has been difficult. It has, as I mentioned, in terms of cash collection, caused some problems. But we are now in a stable situation. The business is operating on the legacy systems and will continue to do so until we move to the new group-wide solution, which I'll come on to. We also mentioned a legal claim against the implementers. It is very clear that the system was not fit for purpose. It has caused disruption. It did not work. And we believe we have a very sound case against the implementers. And consequently, we will take all reasonable steps to pursue the implementer to get recompense. Finally, coming on to the new system, we have identified a group-wide solution which we think will be fit for the business. We're in discussions with a number of suppliers at the moment with a view to starting implementation in the new financial year. And finally, I come on to cash flow, use of our cash generated from operations. Main points I want to highlight is firstly acquisition-related costs, so 7.9 million on acquisitions. We've mentioned Matisano and Intrepidus. And the other point I just wanted to flag up was one of the positive things that did come out of the SAP write-off is a tax credit. So you'll see the income tax repayment. We actually got a repayment of taxes from HMRC, which was the only positive news that's come out of the SAP write-off.
In terms of the group is very much as it has been for a period of time. This slide really reflects where we are, who we are, what we do, and very much the join up of the different business areas. The business areas do join up very closely now. You'll see that we've got great opportunity in North America in both business areas, and actually we are seeing a stronger relationship between the two areas, particularly through the client base and using the client base to push some of the existing products and services into them, but also some of the new areas as we embark on the .secure world. In terms of sector revenue concentrations, again, no real change. There's nothing there you would expect to see a change in. Obviously, software and computer services is the biggest area, followed quickly by banks and financial institutions as our customer base. Mix of business. Now, this actually is quite an interesting one. You know, what we are seeing here is a bigger push towards the rest of the world. Of course, you'd expect it, but North America is very much becoming a more important proposition to us. Not because we passionately believe in North America in its own right, but actually that reflects the basis of our client base. You know, we're now able to serve multinational organisations by covering all of their operations. The operations we now have cover each part of America. We have the offices in New York, we have offices in Austin and Texas, Atlanta, we go through Chicago where we have a very strong security presence. We have San Francisco, Mountain View and Seattle. So all the technology hotspots are covered. We do also have a small business in Australia. Again, this is not suddenly a push to take on Australia and conquer that too. But actually it is just reflecting that we do have customers who do have an Australian representation that needs some of our support, and therefore a very careful, controlled, small investment into that area. What I do see is that will continue on the trend we've seen. We will see the international market become more important to us as it is reflecting our multinational client base. If we look at escrow, yeah, it's always going to be the cornerstone of the group. Of course it is. The cash generation it produces, the recurring revenues and margins are absolutely unique. Again, the UK business is the strongest part of it, is the largest part of it, both in terms of revenue, profitability and headcounts. That will continue. I'm sorry, but this slide doesn't show particularly well, but the US is now becoming substantial to us. There's an opportunity in the United States that we're going to capitalise on. And if we look at the numbers themselves, yes, the UK business grew by 4%. We do expect to see a stronger performance in there. What is clear is that the group is now very well structured to be able to pick up the opportunities. Management in the UK has had to focus on making sure that Europe and the US are sound and solid. We have had issues there. But even so, in the UK, you know, we have seen good performance in verification. We have seen price increases pushed through. We have seen terminations remain at the same level. I think it is worth pointing out, my personal opinion on the IT market is it is about the worst I've ever seen. It is, a polite word is subdued. It's frighteningly difficult. But that doesn't actually stop us in growing the business. We will continue to grow hard, and actually now we've got some of the US and European bits right, I'd like to see a stronger performance from the UK. And that moves us to the US and Europe. I mean, okay, start with the area that actually is the most disappointing to us, seeing actually a fall in revenues in Europe. The European market actually is pretty solid. The European market is pretty good. The problem is that we weren't. We've talked about the issues that we had with our general manager, and actually it's a very sad thing that he left us in the way that he did. Unfortunately, part of the legacy he left us with was some of the people that were employed by him. Anybody who's dealt with some of the European employment legislation, and particularly in the Netherlands, will appreciate the difficulty and complexity in getting rid of people who underperform. It is either immensely expensive or impossible. And that's exactly what it was. In particularly Amsterdam, there is a tremendous amount of competition for escrow. A number of people who have left us have set up organisations, but equally there have always been 2 or 3 players who are actually quite good. Escrow in the Netherlands particularly is a different model. You know, I've talked about the way the agreements work differently. I'll be completely honest, their performance has been good, ours has been poor. What we have done is we've completely changed the way that's operated, and we're looking for a positive performance coming out of the balance of the year. So I'll expect to see that 7% negative return to positive. In the US, we've actually done pretty well. That's not a bad result, 8% growth. We've gone through a complete management change. We've expected that. We've rebranded, we operate as escrow associates in the US, and the early signs are very positive. We've recruited an MD to run the United States business, and he's actually an industry stalwart. So there are more than just me and a couple of other colleagues who've lived in the escrow world for more than 10 years. What Richard brings is experience of growing Iron Mountain's business. He's worked with Iron Mountain for a number of years and actually was very successful there. The early signs are very positive, and part of what we're looking at doing is actually expanding our presence further. There's a great opportunity to see New York as a place to go and grow that business from. But even if we start with the heartland of San Francisco and Atlanta, the opportunities there are very good. So the assurance landscape. I think everyone knows all of this stuff. This isn't new. The great thing about assurance actually now is nothing is new. We do start to understand it. But does that actually mean that we do anything about it? To put our marketplace in context, some of the fundamentals that we all rely upon shouldn't be. You know, antivirus software no longer is a panacea that corporations should rely upon. It's incapable of providing any form of proactive support. Forget it. Mobile, 13% of internet traffic goes through mobiles. It will continue to grow. Add tablets to that. I saw a survey recently that told me that actually the tablet market was not going to grow and the laptop would make a resurgence. Interesting viewpoint. For every buyer, there has to be a seller, so I think they were taking that opposing view. Frankly, that number can only go one way. 4G's with us. We expect to see 5G and beyond. The tablet is going to really rule the roost. And when you then throw bring your own device and the threats and risks that creates, again, for us, it's a huge opportunity. Again, sadly, industrial and cyber espionage is not going to go away. If anything, it's getting worse. If the economy does harden, we expect fraud to go up, of course. And of course, our friends at Anonymous, you know, they'll continue to be very active at what they do with their passionate political beliefs. Very competent, very capable individuals. The work they actually do is incredibly expensive and very disruptive to organisations. If you are attacked by Anonymous, the cost of that is huge. And that's very much the way that our clients are seeing it. They're starting to see this threat landscape as being something they have to proactively protect themselves against. And that brings us to the assurance business. All aspects of that business are positive. Solid organic growth, 11% growth. Margin at 16%. Remember, we did have a very, very major project last year that was margin rich due to the nature of it. A mass mobilisation of our team in an operational response project clearly did create a better margin than we would ordinarily get. Still, and I've always talked about this, never an exploitative one, but to have actually maintained margin is a pretty strong point. Yes, that's going to grow. Yes, I expect margin to get to 20%. Yes, I expect it to get there reasonably quickly over the next 2 or 3 years. Without a shadow of a doubt. The resources that we employ are scarce. The skills that we have are unique. The opportunity for fair pricing is very much in our control. Again, never exploitative. Looking forward, we've got the 3 offices in New York that we're bringing together. Yeah, there will be the costs of getting out of 3 leases and buying one that's going to be appropriate for us, but more importantly, suddenly having a team of 50-odd people, 50 security professionals working out in New York is unique. Nobody else has that skill set. Again, staff development, recruitment continue to work very well for us. Being the biggest test team with all the right values and virtues really does work. Research is a key thing to us, and you'll see in the release we talk about the number of exploits that we've discovered and released back to software owners. It's becoming a major part of what we do and a major part of actually people development. We are accredited, we're recognised, we're responsible. The one that everyone forgets is web. Behind all of this, we have our web performance business. The web performance business that helped create things like the DDoS tool that allows us to mimic a DDoS attack. It's a great proposition for us. It fits with everything we do. A 90% renewal rate, a great margin, great technologies, great ability to develop more managed services, which is something we're very passionate about. We've got new products and areas coming out all the time. Web and load is important and very important to our client base. And as more and more web requirements grow, so will that business area. Now we come to a different area. .secure. Let's call it by its rightful name, Artemis. That's what it is. .secure, firstly and foremost, doesn't matter. The name doesn't matter. We're in a process with ICANN, which is going very well. It's on track. And we are having our application reviewed. But it doesn't matter if we don't get .secure. We're going to do this anyway. If you think back 15 years, I don't think any of us said, I'm going to Google something. I'm going to use Yahoo. If you'd said that, you would have thought that person's clearly a little unusual in his articulation. The name doesn't matter, but a GTLD does. It could be, and I've jokingly used this, Blue Badger. Could be anything. What it actually is the infrastructure and the ability to provide a secure domain such that a consumer or user of that website has complete peace of mind with who he or she is transacting with. That's the fundamentals of this. The name is irrelevant. Yes, we're in a process of contention with Amazon. Let's face it, Amazon, if it came to an open checkbook race, would clearly win. That isn't the key bit. Where we actually are now, and we know this because of the work we've done in developing and designing the application, is we know we've got something that people want. I'm looking forward to being able to announce some early adopters to the program. I'm looking forward to actually being able to announce that those who have applied for their own GTLD, the brands, are looking to us to provide for them a secure domain. One that's actually within their control, so their consumers, their customers, their users, internal and external, know that the biggest problem on the internet, spoofing, is not going to happen. What that does actually mean is we have to accelerate the pace of development. It does actually mean that we have to look at how we're going to build this. Yes, it suddenly does become real. From being, a dream that we conjured up 6-9 months ago, we're now looking at bringing this out in Q1 of next year. What it also does is, and I'm an accountant, so for me this is quite interesting, raise some interesting issues. Historically, a lot of what we would have been able to capitalise, we can't. There's a very grey area as to whether or not some of the costs that we're going to incur, the expenses we're going to incur, are in fact exceptional. The definition, if you go through the accounting standards, are at best grey. But you could argue in setting up a customer support team, which is clearly not the creation and design of anything new, is a unique activity, because we don't do it every time. It's a one-time activity. It's certainly not a capital cost. It's certainly an operating cost, but is it exceptional? Now, the viewpoint we've taken and the guidance we've put out, contrary to our auditors, is it's actually a normal operating expense. We are going through the process of designing a new business area. That's what we do. We constantly evolve. So therefore, we're taking the worst case treatment. We're treating it as an expense item. The costs that are going to be the costs that aren't going to be capitalised, some are in the order of £3 million over the next 12 months or so. We're going to take through expenses. We are going to take guidance from our auditors. Our auditors will prevail, but all we can offer you at the moment is the worst case scenario. What are those costs? Well, I've given you one. It is about setting up customer care teams. It is about setting up technical teams so that you can resolve queries. It is about setting up teams that are going to be able to handle and control the registrations. So it's the operational function of that business area. Behind that, we also have a very large, for us, very large development team who are actually going to design the product itself and make it work. And with that, there'll be capital costs, there'll be innovation. And what we've done pretty well so far is patent as much as we possibly can. Patented in the US, frankly, because it's a darn sight easier than anywhere else. We do look to try and get international protection, but that really is quite hard. but making sure that know-how is nailed down, that it's ours. The build phase has commenced. We have recruited some developers. We have got people on board who are cutting code. The levels of corporate interest are pretty exciting. We've seen that. We've sat there with clients chomping at the bit to be early adopters. I'd like to believe that before the year end we're going to make some form of announcement as to who some of those are. And I also look forward to being able to announce that ICANN eventually will have reviewed our application, ideally on time, to tell us that we are appropriate to own the GTLD. And that will be the next phase. That will be the next bit, the ICANN announcement that will come out. All in all, it is very exciting. Now, the question I think most people will say, what's the revenue model like? How are you going to make a return? The revenue model is going to be fundamentally different to that you see in the domain market. You will not be able to register a .secure domain or whatever the dot is for $29.99. It isn't going to work like that. Everybody who takes a .secure domain will be required to take some of our security services, some of our managed services around the scanning opportunities to make sure it's safe, so that actually they are providing to their client base a real reason why it's safe. Not only what we're making them do, but what their part of the bargain is providing as well, that they are actually covering some of the security bases. So using some of our tools and some of our services. If you look at some of the big corporates, a lot of them do this hoovering up exercise through domain management to acquire every iteration of their name that can be found in the world today. Usually done through marketing, sometimes through IT. The cost to organisations is not just a few $100s, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, I look at what we've registered. We've registered hundreds of domains. Why? To stop other people having them and using them. Put yourself in the position of an FT 100 or Fortune 100 company and think about the number they'd have to do. When you use .secure, you don't have to do that, because no one else can have it. So from that you can draw your own conclusions as to the way pricing is going. Can I give you an exact dollars and cents price or pounds and pence price? No, I can't yet. And part of that is the formulation process with our early adopters. Key thing, it's very exciting. It is going to make the internet a safer place. I do genuinely believe that actually this is going to change an awful lot in the way that we transact. Brave statement. So, to the current trading and outlook. Yeah, we're going to continue in North America, organic and acquisitive growth. I will say that there's nothing hot to trot on the acquisitive market at this point in time, but as always, we're in conversations with many organisations that we believe would fit well with our organisation. The assurance business, I think I've talked about the security landscape being a pretty good place. Escrow, it's growing. The opportunities to improve the US further and make Europe positive are real. We've got a very positive order book. And overall group orders are now at the record they've ever been. From that base point, even setting aside .secure, you know, we do have to be confident about delivering yet another year of excellent growth from NCC Group.